everyone, welcome to Girls Can, a series of podcasts created to help educate and inform young women throughout the world.
Our goal is to empower and inspire the next generation because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow.
Hey everyone, I'm Abby, and this is Girl Can's podcast in Deep Fried Studios. So today, I'm here with my sister Brooke. Brooke, will you please introduce our very special guest?
We have a very special guest in the studio with us today. Miss Jabaria Dent is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Dent Enterprises, a company dedicated to improving our community by providing education, training, and support for local families. With her experience with human resources and education, Miss Jabaria has worked in a myriad of professional fields, both corporate and nonprofit, including workforce training, program development, women's Bible study, and ministry for the City of Grace, Mobile. We are so excited to have Miss Jabaria here with us today to discuss the importance of community involvement and ways in which young girls can position themselves for success. Thanks so much for coming, Miss Jabaria.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, to get started, I wanted to ask you, how did you come up with the idea of Dent Enterprises?
Well, it's interesting that you asked because my husband and I, we get up and we go walking. We have 2 dogs, purebred mutts as we call them. And we were walking Lady and Carter, and we noticed that there was a sense of lack of community on our street and in our neighborhood. My husband and I are both pastors, and so we began to pray about the situation. And my husband said, we really need to do something to transform. We're always waiting for someone else to do something, and we need to take back our community. And so from that, we began thinking about how could we, as a family, transform our neighborhood. And we know that change is not intentional. If you ask the common person, today, what are you thinking about changing? Most people are like, It's not an intentional thought process for most of us. That's number one. The second thing is that it takes time. The type of work that goes into community redevelopment or transforming a neighborhood into a community is a process. And so we began thinking about, what are the gifts and the talents and the skills that God has deposited into us that we could begin to use to change the lives of others. And one of the things, God had already begun opening doors for us to talk about parenting. And so what we find is that when you look at the community, you have those on the economic end, and then you have those on the social end. But very rarely do the two entities talk to each other. So because it is a big lift, it is hard work to take a family, to teach them relational skills, family dynamics, money management skills, workforce development skills, and then position them to be able to move into the foundation for wealth in America, which is home ownership. Real estate is still by far the biggest foundation for wealth development and wealth creation in this country. And so how do we help those families get there? That all kind of came together as we sat and we brainstormed and we talked with people, and that's how Dent Enterprises was formed.
Wow. So how did you get things rolling, get everyone involved?
My husband and I, like I said, we already have a circle of influence, and that circle of influence is within ministry. And so we had relationships with pastors. We had relationships with the city through different things that we'd done in the past. And so we just began reaching out to people, asking the questions, what do you need to do this? Well, I knew from the church plant about forming an entity, filing the name with the state, and then there's probate court cost, and your articles of incorporation and bylaws, and that all sounds really difficult and this big complicated task. But what it really is going online to Rocket Lawyer or an online place and finding the right template, reading it, making sure that it met, letting an attorney look through it, give them $50, $75. Most of them have a set rate of what they charge to review it and file it. It is really not as intimidating as it sounds. And so really just calling it, and as I answer your questions, I'm doing it kind of from a position of, you guys are going to do this one day. And so how do you go about doing it? Because for a long time as a young person, nobody told me how to do this. My parents never told me, when you start a business, this is what you need to do. And so we had to learn. But now that we know, we want to empower young people to be able to do that, help people who have an entrepreneurial spirit to become those business owners.
Sometimes I think it seems so overwhelming when you want to create so much change. It's such a big goal. Have you ever felt like there are going to be these difficult challenges that you've had to face and it's so overwhelming? And how did you deal with those?
It is. It is overwhelming, but you take one bite at a time. There's an old proverb that says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so when we began to think about our company, when we began to think about Dent Enterprises, it really is three entities in one. There is my husband is an author, and we're speakers, and we write and develop curriculum. And so we created an LLC called Thinking for Change for that piece of our business. And then you had the real estate investment piece that included purchasing the rundown, blighted homes and flipping them and creating affordable housing. And we call that our Power to Create Wealth division. And then finally, there was the parenting piece called Ep.5, Effective Parenting Initiative. And so we kind of broke our business down into those three lines of business, which on their own, if you just ask me about one, they might seem disconnected, but they are very intricately woven together. They're very intertwined intentionally. I say that to say we began focusing on one piece. So the first thing that we focused on this year, and we've been intentionally focused on, is parenting. We've been focusing on going after school districts and trying to reach parents where we already know they are. We know that they're in schools, and then working with other ministries to bring the curriculum to them. So we've been focused on EPI. My company was selected by the Mobile Chamber of Commerce to participate as one of 5 small businesses in their Minority Business Accelerator, their MBA program. And so for the MBA portion, we're focusing on Power to Create Wealth, on our real estate investment portfolio, and building that and working with the necessary private and public entities to fund the work that we're trying to do. And then Thinking for Change is kind of an ongoing thing, because I laugh. I tell my husband, I said, every Sunday we're writing a novella. Every sermon is a vignette in a book. And we're in the process of editing his latest work, 42, Becoming a Powerful Person of Patience. And so as we work on that, we'll work to publish that. So it seems sometimes disjointed, but if we try to take it all on at once, it is overwhelming. But if we can focus on one piece at a time, then it makes it a little more manageable.
What advice would you give a young girl who is thinking about starting her own business, just like you helped co-founded Dent Enterprises?
Do what you love. And what I found with a lot of young people, girls and young men, because I also work in education in the nonprofit sector, there seems to be an identity crisis among a lot of our young people. And everyone is looking for identity, and they're searching for purpose. And I always tell people, if you want to find your purpose, find how you want to serve. Whether it's setting up a studio for young girls to come in and be able to share their message and get it out to the world. Whether it is being that conduit that speaks to young ladies and creates a platform of education for others. Whatever that passion is, when it's connected to service, that's where your purpose is found. And as long as you are operating within the purpose that God has created you for, I believe that you will always be successful. Now, I would say the humanistic side of that is this. Surround yourself with people who are willing to pour into you, who are willing to give you advice, who are willing to direct you. And between YouTube and Google, I think that you can just do anything. I believe that a really dedicated person probably could perform open heart surgery off YouTube. I mean, it is just, I found how to do some of the most amazing things on YouTube. And so do your research and get your ducks in a row, ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask, and seek out the experts to get your dream going.
Wow. So what advice would you give to a young girl who is struggling with identity problems?
So being that my perspective and my worldview is shaped by my faith, and my faith is in Jesus Christ, I would tell a young lady, you don't have to look for who you are, because God already said who you are in Psalms 139. He said that you are fearfully and that you are wonderfully made. He said that before you were formed in your mother's womb, He already knew every page of your life before ever a one was lived. And so if you know that, then you know that every detail about yourself, from your hair color to your skin color to your eyes, your height, your shape, your size, the things that you're good at, your personality, it was all predestined by God, but it was done for a purpose. So The fact that you may be a techie while someone else is more artsy and creative, and another person is that humanistic anthropologist, sociologist, social worker type of person. That's not by happenstance. It's really by design, because there's an assignment that God has for your life that nobody else can accomplish. And so when you look for that, when you seek Him first, everything else tends to fall into place.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about your work with nonprofits?
Considering I'm a third-generation preacher, I think my whole life was founded in nonprofits. I think all I know is nonprofit. In fact, I would say the 15 years I spent in corporate America were probably the most tenuous for me and stressful for me, because I do kind of operate out of a nonprofit bend. You know, I see things with a nonprofit lens most times. My father was a pastor, and my mother was a social worker / daycare director for a community center. And so I grew up in the nonprofit world. I remember saying, this is all nice and good, but I really want to make a lot of money when I grow up. And so I did undergrad, and I was going to become the first Black female Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. I moved to D.C. I managed law firms, not ever having a law degree. That is so funny. I was the HR director, never went to law school a day in my life. In fact, I was going to go to law school, and God really has a sense of humor, because I gave back a 5-year fellowship to UVA to pay my way through seminary. So we were real committed to the cause, and probably a little crazy. I've always thought about life through the nonprofit world, and even finding ways in the for-profit world. The thing I loved about human resources was that in HR, that's usually where the community outreach funds are, where that pot of money is, where companies are looking to be able to give back into their communities and do the philanthropic work that's tied to the company's mission. And so I always wanted to get my hands on that money so that I could give it to the schools and give it to nonprofits that are looking to, feed the homeless or education. And I was really always connected to education, because I realized that education was my way out. And so I wanted other young people to have those opportunities. So I've always been in nonprofit, always.
Do you have a personal story about something that made you really love working for charities and giving back to your community?
My senior year at Spring Hill College, I was able to take a mission trip to Yucatan, Mexico. And I spent my spring break with 14 other young people in one of the poorest communities that I can fathom in my mind. And I remember this young girl's eyes as we were sitting to eat dinner one night, because we were told not to feed the locals. And coming from a family of 19 grandchildren, my grandmother's rule was if you couldn't feed one, nobody ate. We all sit and we eat together. And so watching these children, they knew when food was being cooked. And so they would all kind of line up around the compost where we were staying. And I just remember this little girl's eyes and just the pain and the sorrow. And so I remember I couldn't eat that night, because here we were with all this food that we could not give to these children. Not because the parish didn't care, not because they were trying to be heartless, but because they knew that they could not sustain the need. And so they had to make that hard decision. But for me, it was heartbreaking, and it changed my life forever. And so when I got back to America and we landed in New Orleans, after I got up from laying on the ground for 12 minutes, just thanking God for America. I'm just so happy to be on U.S. soil, Jesus. It changed my worldview. And I realized that as poor as we may be, there's somebody who's always worse off. And it just really made me a very grateful person, but it also made me a person that wanted to fix what I could.
What drives you to do this amazing work?
This may sound corny or very churchy, but it truly is God. It really is His grace that allows me every day to get up and to go out and to do what I believe He's assigned to my hand to do, which is ministry. And my business is an extension of ministry. And yes, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we don't want to turn a profit. I have a son going to Morehouse in a couple of months. We need a profit because we got a bill coming. And I want to leave a legacy of wealth for my children and teach them how to be entrepreneurs. As an African American, we didn't hear growing up in school, start your own business. They talked a lot about side hustles. Everybody had a side hustle. I remember my grandfather had a contract with Mobile Gas, and he washed their fleet of cars, and he would take their cardboard for recycling. We called it bussing boxes. And so we said, well, what was your first job? My first job was bussing boxes and washing trucks for a box of donuts on Saturday. I really should have called child labor law. But that was my first job. But we had these side hustles, but nobody said, you know what? You could take that and create a business model and actually do that all the time. And I really want to be that person that tells young people, especially young minorities and women, that gift you have for making cakes? Write your business plan. Get you a small business loan. Do that full time. That lady that loves to shop and make these little brooches or funky hair bows or can make these beautiful designs. Make that a business because that's what you're passionate about. That's what you're good at. So that's what I want to leave to my children. I want to leave a legacy of being able to make a profit, build wealth, but be a blessing to other people at the same time. That's what I want to do.
Have you ever faced any challenges as a woman in a professional field that you've had to overcome, and how did you overcome them?
I always said I kind of had the 3 strikes against me. I was black, I was a woman, and I wasn't skinny. I didn't look like Beyonce. So we had to make up for that somehow. We had to. I realized that I think my gift is a collaborator. I tend to see connections. As I sit here in Deep Fried Studios, I'm already thinking of all the business. I was like, I wonder how many people don't know that this is here and how many people need to be here to create a podcast. And I need, several of his cards because I know several people that are looking to do this kind of stuff. I'm wired that way. I'm always thinking of how to collaborate and connect people and connect projects and ideas and thoughts. And so I was never one that cared about my name being anywhere. I don't care about the credit. And so that served me well in corporate America. Now, there are some that are a little bit more, feminist left than me who may say, oh, women should get just as much notoriety and just as much. And that might be true. I'm not saying that. But for me, if your name go on the plaque and our children get $50,000, your name can go on the plaque, give me the check, let's get the work done. I'm really not about that. So my ability is to make you think it's your idea and you get all the credit and I just get what I need done. And as long as you're not hungry for the credit and the fame and the glory, we as women have amazing power to be able to influence and change the direction and the trajectory of things. I overcame my challenges just by making them think it was all their idea.
Sometimes do you think it's frustrating that you can't do everything, you can't fix everything in the world, and there's so much of a need, but it's impossible to transform the world?
Well, as a recovering control freak, I think I'm on step 2 of recovery. I think there's like 100 more to go, but it is frustrating. It's very frustrating to feel like the more you try to fix things, the more things that you see that are broken. And sometimes I feel like Mr. Incredible. He says, you save the world and there they go messing it up again. But I think the way to combat that is to realize that I'm not God and that I was never made to fix anything. And so my job is just to allow him to use me to do whatever it is he's trying to accomplish in the earth. And that's my assignment. And where my assignment ends, someone else's assignment begins. And I just do my assignment.
What are some tips that you would give to women to position themselves for success?
As my good friend, Miss Anitra Bell Henderson, often quotes to young ladies, manage your brand. You are a brand. Your name is a brand. While it might not be worth $30 million right now, at some point you never know what it could be worth. And so managing your brand means managing what you allow to be put out there on social media to the extent that you can. Managing what you post, managing how you present yourself every day, managing, controlling and watching your tongue, and because you never know who's watching you. Every day you step outside your home, even inside your home, people are watching you. You know, younger sisters are watching their older sisters and emulating them. So manage that. Control as much as you can of your brand and decide what you want your brand to be. You're never too young. Create your own logo. Just start putting it on all your stuff. Create your logo. And so one day that logo could be worth millions. But manage your brand and make sure that it reflects what you feel your purpose and your mission is in life. I think that's the number one thing to be successful. Everything else we've kind of touched on. Surround yourself with positive people. Reach up and reach back. Have someone mentoring you, but also be willing to mentor someone else. And always look for an opportunity to serve, because it is in your serving that you'll find your purpose and your passion.
So you mentioned mentors. Would you mind telling us of a person who inspires you and who has acted like a mentor to you?
I have a really cool mom, and she has inspired me in so many ways. So smart and so gracious. She's just an awesome woman. And the beauty is I get to appreciate that now that I'm an adult and I'm a mother. I really get to appreciate what my mom poured into and the example she set for me. And I get to work with my mom. She's on our board of directors for my company. She's one of our partners. She was one of my first investors. She took out money from her retirement to help fund one of our projects. How awesome is that? Because she believes in our vision and our mission and one of the things and the things that we're doing. So my mom was a great mentor. I had the good fortune of being mentored by the Honorable Merceria Ludgood. She's been a mentor in my life, all my life, for as long as I can remember. She was the reason why I left Mobile. I did an internship in D.C. my junior year of college, and she was there working. And so she came and got me from campus one Sunday, and she took me to church with her and took me out to lunch. And I just remember saying, this is so awesome. And she gave me the opportunity. She opened my eyes to possibilities in D.C. I never knew it then, but less than 2 years later, I found myself back in D.C. living. And I was a member of the very church that she took me to visit. And so she's always been that person who, when I'm getting ready to make a big move or I have a question, she's one of the people I can text or call and say, hey, can we have lunch? And she usually knows what that means when I say, can we have lunch? It means I need to pick her brain. I need her wisdom. And I think those two people really have, and my aunt who I lived with when I first moved from Mobile, really showed me what it meant to be a professional woman. I always tell this story. I remember we had Dress Down Friday at work. Now, I'd been working at this, it was an energy company, but it was like a call center for this energy company. And because it was a call center, we didn't have any direct customer interaction. And on Fridays, I saw people coming in there looking literally like they just rolled out of bed and came to work. Like pajamas and house shoes and all kind of craziness. So this particular Friday, I had overslept and I rolled out and I said, man, people just go to work like any kind of way anyway. And so I threw on some sweats. They matched. I mean, they were sweatpants. They weren't pajamas. I put on some, I'll never forget it, some red sweatpants and the matching red sweatshirt and my tennis shoes. And I was running down the steps and I was heading out the door. And she said, where are you going? And I said, I'm late. I'm going to work. She said, no, hell, you ain't. Not in that. She said, you get up there and you put some jeans on and press them. She said, now you can wear that sweatshirt. She said, but you put some jeans on and put a jacket on over that sweatshirt. I said, well, Aunt BB, if I have to do all that, I might as well put. There you go. Let's just go on and put on the whole outfit. And she said, you dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. And that lesson stuck with me and sticks with me to this day. And so she never allowed me to present myself as anything less than this well put together professional. And I really looked up to her. So those are my three: my mom, Merck, and my Aunt Bertie.
I think it's really cool how your aunt's advice kind of connects back to what you said previously about your brand and preserving your brand.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question. If there was one book that you could recommend to any teenage girl before they moved on to the next stage in life, what would it be and why?
The best book I can think of, and I know, y'all gonna be like, this lady. It really is the Bible. Because there's everything you can encounter in your life is going to be there. There's side chicks in the Bible. If you read the story, Hagar in the Bible, that's the first side chick in history. There's side chick, there's intrigue, there's brother drama, there's cousin, there's murder, there's mystery, and all of this stuff. And in that is this story, this interwoven story of redemption and love. And there have been so many nights, especially when I moved to D.C., when I felt all alone and that nobody got me and my life was going to come to an end. And I would just open that book and God would speak to me. I would inevitably find a scripture that spoke to my situation right where I was and tell me how to handle it. And so that book is our manual for life. You know, my husband always says, when you buy an iPhone or an expensive phone and you get that piece of equipment in your hand, it comes with a manufacturer's warranty and a manual. And he said most of us never take the time to read the manual. So we never use the phone to its fullest potential. And he said so many of us in our lives, we came with a manual, but so many times we fail to read the manual. And then when you break your iPhone, there are authorized dealers. You can't just take your iPhone to any dealer and have them touch it because it will void the warranty. And yet we keep allowing unauthorized people to speak into our lives or to tell us how to handle our life. And they're not our authorized dealer. They're not authorized to speak into our lives. And so if we would learn to read the manual and when we're broken, go to our authorized dealer, then our lives will be so much better.
Thank you so much for coming today, Ms. Dent. We really had a fun time with you and we learned a lot.
Thank you so very much.
This has been Girls Can, a podcast and an organization dedicated to improving the lives of young women in our community.
We want to encourage young women to make a difference through education and service.
Because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow. Because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow.